Hola a todos, bienvenidos a un nuevo capítulo del podcast de Kfan. Este episodio es posible gracias al apoyo de Google, un aliado fundamental para el ecosistema de las startups en España gracias a Google Cloud. Además de ser partner de Kfan, Google Cloud también colabora con muchas de nuestras startups participadas. Por eso, hoy queremos compartir con vosotros muchas de las iniciativas que estamos desarrollando de forma conjunta, como por ejemplo el impulso de la innovación con inteligencia artificial. Google Cloud está ayudando a las startups a desarrollar productos y aplicaciones de inteligencia artificial de vanguardia utilizando Gemini y el resto de sus servicios. Estos servicios garantizan el cumplimiento de la normativa europea en materia de residencia de datos. ¿Qué significa esto? Que los datos de las startups están seguros y que además no son utilizados por Google para entrenar sus propios modelos. Además, Google pone a disposición de las startups su marketplace como canal de ventas internacional que les permite llegar a clientes de todo el mundo y de esta forma acelerar su ciclo de ventas. Del mismo modo, el Google for Startups Campus Madrid se ha destacado como un espacio exclusivo donde incubar los proyectos más disruptores, desde donde se llevan a cabo los programas de Google for Startups, experiencias de 3 meses diseñadas para compañías que utilizan IA para innovar de manera responsable en sectores como la salud, la ciberseguridad o la educación. Las compañías también pueden disfrutar de créditos en la nube. Las startups en fase inicial pueden optar hasta 2.000 euros. En el caso de empresas que hayan cerrado su primera ronda de financiación, esta cifra puede alcanzar los 250.000 euros. Por último, las startups que desarrollen proyectos con IA alcanzarán los 350.000 euros en créditos. Si eres una startup que busca impulsar su crecimiento, no dudes en explorar las oportunidades que te ofrece Google Cloud. Y ahora os dejo con el último capítulo del podcast de Kfan.
Good morning, Gus. How are you? So who's our guest today, Gustavo?
Our guest today is my Argentinian friend, Bianca Sassoon, and managing partner of 17 Sigma. Welcome to the podcast, Bianca.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Jaime. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So Brazilians and Argentinians can be friends besides football, I guess?
I guess so, right? You're lucky, Gus.
Bianca.
I'm a football fan, but not as much. So we're lucky on that side.
Not a hardcore one. Yeah.
Nah.
So Bianca, we usually like to start our conversations with getting to know the person a bit more. So tell us a bit about your background. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What did you study in school? And how did that translate into your professional career?
Happy to. So I guess I was actually born in the States. I'm American. Argentine parents. I am a single child. My parents got divorced when I was 8. I moved back to Argentina with my mom. I had a dual upbringing in that sense. My dad stayed in New York. I lived with my mom. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I guess that marked a lot in my upbringing. I always had this window within in the US and in Argentina, and I would fly frequently from a very early age, which I'm very fortunate to have had both experiences. I did do, however, undergrad here in Buenos Aires, stayed close to home. I studied economics at a prestigious private school here, and after that, I went on into investment banking. Actually based out of Lima, Peru for 2 years, which was a very interesting and intense experience. So that was around 2 years.
Interesting in what respect?
Interesting in regards to, I covered the Andean region mostly. So it's called LHG Capital. It was again, an investment banking firm mainly focused on the Andean region, including though Mexico. We covered multiple verticals. I led transactions in the energy sector, in the entertainment sector, in the health sector. It was more over on the sales side, I guess, side of transactions. And I was very lucky. It was a very small team. It was founded by an ex-JP Morgan who had led the division for 20 years there, was Peruvian, so he opened his own boutique. So I worked, I guess, very side by side with him, and it was a very interesting learning experience, which I guess really really boosted my career in that regards.
And do you feel Argentinian or American? Out of curiosity.
100% Argentinian. 100%
Okay.
Argentinian.
No doubts.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one thing, Bianca. This is a personal curiosity. How different is it growing up in the U.S. and in Argentina? I understand you were born actually in New York, right? I mean, well, of course, New York is a fantastic global city, but Buenos Aires is a fantastic and very cosmopolitan city as well. How do you relate both?
That's a great question. I do think I love Buenos Aires. It's my country of choice. It's where I choose to live today. It's where I chose to live again when deciding to study undergrad abroad or study undergrad here. I chose Argentina. I think they relate into the sense that they're both very cosmopolitan, although the culture and the lifestyle here in Argentina is much more, I would say, warmer than growing up in New York. I guess the U.S. culture in that regards is much more colder, transactional, which I don't think in any means is bad, but I just feel myself more ingrained to the Argentine or Latin American lifestyle and traditions.
Even in the family, I mean, more gregarious and comparing Argentinians and or Latin Americans in general with Americans.
Yes, I'm super close with my family. Again, I was raised by my mom and grandmother mostly, and I feel super close to them. And I see in comparison to my U.S. friends, of course, we're doing generalizations here, right? But I do think family culture plays a huge role in Latin American roots, and I really like that about our different countries.
And jumping forward, I mean, we'll come back to that later, but you are a super connector in Latin American VC ecosystem, which is very, very collaborative. I mean, we are comparing to M&A, for example, VC is much more friendly in the rounds. I mean, several funds shipping up and so forth. Do you also see that happening in the American culture, or is this more gregarious, more connector, and more friendly approach more in the Latin American way?
I would say first of all, thank you for that compliment, but I would say it goes case by case. I think it's just part of my nature and 17 Sigma's nature to be as collaborative as possible. That is ingrained in our DNA. We want the best for our founders we invest in. So that comes into play when we decide in terms of round dynamics, who we partner with, who we help, how we help, and everything that comes into that equation. I can't speak for every U.S. fund or a Latin American fund, to be honest. There are exceptions in all, but at least I do see that ingrained in our DNA.
Bianca, you briefly talked about culture and about how in love you are with Buenos Aires and Argentina. We don't need to get into politics, but speak a bit about what the vibe is right now in the country. Obviously, with Milei, everything that's happened in the past few months, where the country is coming from the financial troubles of the past few years. Speak about what it feels like to be on the ground now in terms of like people's behavior and happiness or not. What does it feel like?
At least I can speak for how I feel like at this given time. I think we're going in the right direction. As everything in politics, it's very hard to be 100% in favor or against of the person in turn, let's say, or in the administration in turn. However, I do see a huge change in what is Argentina in terms of hopefully tailwinds that will come from this. There has been a huge macroeconomic stabilization in the last few months. And I think that in total honesty, there has been a huge openness to markets that we haven't encountered for a long time in Argentina. And I'm very positive about the future of the country. Moreover, we have seen great companies being built, like the Mercado Libre, Globan, Despegar, OLX, OutZero, and so on and so forth. And I do think there's going to be a hopefully huge new waves of these companies as markets continue to open and as we continue to see a more stable macroeconomic approach as we continue.
This trip that Milei did to Silicon Valley was quite unbelievable, right? I mean, the number of top executives and founders that he met there, you don't see that happening a lot, not only in Latin American politics, but also in global politics. The reception that he had within the ecosystem and the top technological executives was unbelievable.
Yeah, you don't, and that was impressive indeed, like from a point of view being Argentine and loving what we do. Tech, VC, it was just amazing. Like it was a movie to say the least. It was really nice. It's really nice to see how I guess these other leaders now are willing to embrace us and see, and hopefully we're going to see that in real collaborations, not only in the meetings and who he met, but actually in real things happening in the country. So I'm very looking forward to that.
Also, have you seen more international people going to live in Buenos Aires?
I wouldn't say coming to live to Buenos Aires, but I would see a huge interest in Argentina as a whole. I do think as markets open, of course, there has been much more people interested in knowing what has been happening. People have been more, let's say, people who have not been interested in Argentine politics or economics in the past, much more thoughtful and much more read on it. So it has been actually great in terms of public view to see that and see how Argentina is now part of the map again.
Fantastic. So now going back to your professional background. So you were an investment banker for a couple of years in Lima, Peru, doing Hispam deals, I understand. And then you went to startup land in 2018, joining Kaszek, right?
Exactly.
And how was that? I mean, you got into a very, very well-known Latin American VC firm. You were championing his spam deals, I believe. How was the tech scene at the time and how it evolved? I mean, you entered into 2018 when it was starting to boom in Latin America, and you left in 2021 when things were still booming. I mean, it was a fantastic time for LatAm. And then we can go into the 17 story a little later.
Of course. So I was very fortunate to get into Kaszek in 2018. So again, as we said, I had studied undergrad economics, then did investment banking, M&A, sell side. I wanted to know more about the buy side, and I was very fortunate to be able to combine buy side with another passion of mine that was technology, and get into Kaszek in 2018, move back to Argentina, my country from Lima, Peru, where I was living at the time. Worked almost 4 years at Kaszek, spearheading the Spanish-speaking investments that in 2018 were at least not that many, not only in terms of Kaszek's portfolio, but I guess in the Latin American scene as a whole. Brazil, as we know, is the largest market, and at the time, and it still is, but was by far the most developed. So Kaszek's main investments at the time were those, as we all know, Novan, Crédita, Quintana, Logi, and the list goes much longer. But in the Spanish-speaking side, still everything was to be built. So I guess I was at the right place at the right moment, being able to work with veterans like Hernan and Nico Sigasi was just amazing. So I'm very grateful for my years there.
Fantastic. And how do you see the ecosystem developing during those years? It was a fantastic boom.
It was a fantastic boom. Like I cannot be more happy at the time where I started my career and have actually being able to find my calling so early. I guess just I spearheaded the Spanish speaking side, so I can speak more about about those, I guess there would just started to be a huge development in countries such as Chile, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, which we hadn't seen, I guess, in the previous years. And being able to be part of that was really key, and it was really transformative, right, for, I guess, the industry as a whole.
And you mentioned, Bianca, that it was a privilege to learn from Nico and the rest of the team. So what did you learn from them that you think you continue to apply, or you're applying now at 17?
So I guess the learnings were many. Of course, they're very experienced operators, and I haven't operated myself. So I guess there were many learnings. I not like the crunching number skills, which I knew how to do, but the more, I would call it the more, of course, the operational and the soft skills. We're dealing with founders, people here, life stories, dreams. Moreover, getting to know the people and scaling products, going from 0 to 1, from 1 to 100. So I guess I was able to work closely and very humbly learn some of those skills and apply them today here at 17 Sigma.
And as you said, they were former entrepreneurs, former founders. You were not. Did you ever think that would put you as a disadvantage when it comes to running your own firm and your VC career? I think that's something that all of us non-operators have thought about at some point when you become a VC.
Definitely, I have thought about it many times. I am very fortunate to have Pierpaolo Barbieri, the CEO and founder of Wada, a 2.5 billion valued neobank with presence in Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia. He is the founder of 17 Sigma and has, of course, all the operational experience needed well and above beyond. And I think we complement each other very well in that aspect. Of course, I learn a lot from him. He is one of the most intelligent and well-rounded people I know. And I think I was able to let's say, feel more comfortable on the operational side by having him in 17 Sigma as my partner, I guess.
So let's take this moment to understand one thing. I mean, you work with fantastic former operators at Kaszek, so the founders of Mercado Libre. And when you founded 17 Sigma, you joined Pierpaolo, who is the founder and CEO of also one of the largest tech companies in Argentine history. So amazing. Was that by design? How do you see us more finance-based people and working with these former founders and former operators in VC investing?
So let me take a little step back here. So I guess throughout my Kaszek days, I like how I saw the ecosystem. Going back to the previous question, was as the ecosystems, at least in Spanish speaking, started to develop, I saw there was a huge opportunity in more of the pre-seed side of investing, more of the embryonic side, pre-seed and seed. And that continued to be the case as years went by. And I was very, very happy when actually Pierpaolo approached me and suggested and actually offered me to manage 17 Sigma. So I guess in that way, he in himself was very bullish on creating the next generation of entrepreneurs, and also saw this opportunity. And I had known him from mutual friend for a while, and we had always kicked off with mutual values and different perspectives on how we saw technology developing in Latin America. So I was very honored when he did the proposal to join 17 Sigma. So, and I guess since there, our partnership just thrive out of the trust and values we share and the mission we have for the early stage LatAm ecosystem.
Will you comment a bit on this opportunity that you were seeing and still seeing pre-seed and seed?
Of course. I think from early on, just since at least 2018, just the opportunities and the funds in pre-seed and seed were just so little, so small. And I guess also the professionalism, speaking very honestly, was very low in terms of pre-seed and seed investing. So having worked at one of the best or the best VCs in Latin America, I saw a huge opportunity in actually raising the bar for earlier stage investing. So that was for me very important. And also, I guess that there was a lot of help needed for companies to get to for that 0 to 1 phase, which didn't actually, I think, was very scarce, both in terms of, again, VCs really wanting to help in that stage and also in capital. I think capital for early stage startups during those years was very, very scarce. We're very lucky that has changed, and thankfully there's much more early stage VCs today, both locally and internationally, given different, I guess, and internationally looking into LatAm. But at the time there was none. So that was a huge opportunity, and I still think there's a huge opportunity in being able to disrupt early stage.
And focusing in pre-seed specifically, I mean, it's very important to understand founders and backgrounds and profiles and so forth. Do you see differences in the countries in which you operate between these prospective founders, and why choosing one against the other? That's what I mean. For me, it's quite special because 17 Sigma is, I would say, one of the very few pre-seed investors in Hispanic LatAm who is not only not afraid of Brazil, but doing an immense job in Brazil. So how do you see sourcing pre-seed founders in all these different countries, and how do you see picking one against the other for that?
That's a great question, Gus. I think the majority of our investment decisions in analyzing pre-seed deals is about teams. And teams for us are the same in the sense the bar is the same no matter what country we look at. We look at values. We look at, of course, analytical skills. We look at soft skills. We look at values. Those are paramount for us. And I guess what make the most decisions, of course, teams are important because they have to be addressing a significant TAM and being able to build potential moats. But I guess in the state where we're currently investing in, that 17 Sigma team is the most important part of that. And I guess that is the same from Brazil to Uruguay to Mexico to Bolivia. That's exactly the same. Great teams always look alike. Of course, there's nuances and everything, but great teams look alike. And that's why we also decided to be a regional VC. So we're industry agnostic, and we're also regional, as you well said, in terms of investing in Brazil. Brazil is a huge market. Of course, we face more competition, let's call it, in terms of pre-seed and seed funds in Brazil, but we're not afraid. We're very collaborative as well. And I guess as a personal trait, I love challenges. And again, as for Kaszek, I didn't really do any Brazilian deals. I was focused on the Spanish speaking part. When starting 17 Sigma, knowing we wanted to build something big here, for me, it was very important to spend a lot of time in Brazil. And I think most of the deals we were able to invest in, win, and are closely side by side with are deals that we really have shown our value throughout that time and really showed that we're here for the long run. We really believe in Brazil, and we give a different perspective, right? Being let's say a LatAm regional investor in respect to that in regards to only being a Brazil or a Spanish speaking firm.
Do you see companies in Brazil trying to build more twin regional approaches, or company like founders, pre-seed founders in Brazil are more focused on their regional local market, whereas the other ones, Colombians and Chilean and Argentinians, are building more international from the start, international solutions. And also, how do you see Mexicans within this globalization or internationalization of companies? Let's put it like that.
So by far, we know Brazil is the largest and most developed market in the region, right? So in the majority of cases, pre-seed founders in Brazil are thinking about Brazil only, and we like and respect that. It will be silly for a pre-seed founder to be pitching, let's say, a regional company. They could be pitching a global company coming out of Brazil, but already speaking about, let's say, I'm starting in Brazil, and after the seed, I'm expanding to Mexico, seems a bit unrealistic. I think, and we know Brazil can be a market in within itself, and huge opportunities have been built only by addressing that market. So in that regards, we don't see so much of Brazil going out of the market. The inverse is more common. Again, it may not be so common in our stage of investing. Again, we're still a relatively newly minted fund, in the sense that our companies have graduated into Series A and a few to Bs, but most of our companies are still in a pre-seed and seed stage, in which their original countries of inception are still the original countries of focus. And we do believe that it's important to win those countries, to be the best players in those countries, to find product market fit, and then to expand. It would be silly to do so before actually having those very clear indications.
Perfect. And just another one last point regarding this pre-seed sourcing in multiple countries. You have a very typical approach of going to spend about a month, correct me if I'm wrong, in each country, so as to not only develop but nurture and maintain the local sourcing network. Would you comment a little more about that?
Of course. So I particularly love to travel, and as we're a regional firm, we like spending, and each of us likes spending significant time in every country we invest in. For me, it's not enough to travel a week or two to the country. We really want to be embedded in the local ecosystems. We don't travel like for specific events or for specific things. We like to be there and spend time on the ground. That's, for me, the only way you can realistically kick the tires if you really want to be relevant in the market you're building. So in that regards, I have, last year, I think it was 9 times. I was telling Jaime before that I was in Sao Paulo. This year it has been 4 counted to date. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's a month, sometimes, again, that was only my trips. The rest of the team travels frequently as well. We're 4 of us in the core investment team. We try to, each of us, be year round in Sao Paulo. So you should find one of us in Sao Paulo year round, hopefully. So, and that's not only with Sao Paulo, but in that case, like Brazil being the one that we is more of a challenge for us, again, in terms of competition, not being like even language barriers and different cultural traits. But we travel, of course, a lot to Mexico, Colombia, for those, both because of my networks and peers networks and the whole team networks. I guess that comes humbly more easy to us.
That's amazing. I wish I could do it. If I had no kids, I would do it.
I guess I can.
I would gladly do it. By the way, Bianca, we haven't given you a chance to say how big is the fund, what type of checks do you write? Can you speak a bit about that for founders?
So the fund is a $30 million fund. So that's our first fund, launched in 2022. Again, founded by Pier Paolo. Is full-time CEO at Voila, but very embedded into our operations as well. I'm managing partner, and we're very happy to count with 3 others in the investment team. So altogether, I do believe we share the same values and are very happy and are very hands-on with everyone we partner with, and we really enjoy what we're doing. We invest, as we have been discussing, regionally, pre-seed. We're industry agnostic. I think that is super important. So we have invested in companies doing not only fintech, which I guess for most of my deals at Kaszek were fintech, and it's of course Pierre's expertise, but I guess we have also invested in education tech, in health tech, in climate tech. So in that regards, we're also pretty diverse, and what we don't know, we learn, and we're very keen on learning. So that's something that I think also distinguishes us as a fund.
Well, another thing that distinguishes you is the LP base, right? I mean, you have a very, very star LP base. So Niall Ferguson, General Canlis, partners of Monaches, Marcelo Claudi, Kevin Ryan, Sebastian Mejia from Rappi, Alan Howard, Isaac Lee, Diego Dayanov. I mean, how do you explore this LP base and the benefit of 17 Sigma?
So first of all, we're very honored to have that LP base. It's something that we generally don't discuss a lot, not because, of course, we're honored to, but we want to be known independently of those. But we cannot be more happy of their support. In that regard, we are very collaborative with them. We also respect a lot their time and their opinions. We like to, in the case of other funds that are investors enough, we do like to connect them and be their point person and, let's say, teams on the ground in terms of what is happening here. And in other very industry specific type of LPs and investors, we do count on them on their full support with anything we need. And we have built that relationship throughout the years, and that is hugely part and I think mostly part, of course, of Pierre's relationship with them and how he built it, actually how the fund was founded since the beginning. So since Pierre decided to put together the fund, there was an invitation only fund to the investors of Voila in that regard. So we're very fortunate to have them as backers, and for them to have chosen us and who trusted in Pierre and myself to be able to hopefully build the next generation of pre-seed and seed companies in the region.
And go ahead, Jaime.
No, go. You go, Gus.
I mean, I understand. I mean, 17 Sigma is very special in the way you describe it, but why is it so special to you? I mean, why was it so special to start a VC firm? I understand living in Kaszek in 2021 was not the easiest thing to do from a personal perspective. Why did you have it inside of you to become a founder?
I really like this question. So, and something I have internally thought about many times, I guess never actually spoke about it. I think I always had a desire to somehow be an entrepreneur. I guess I really also love VC and like learning and working with different people and working with different disciplines as well. So I would say right now how I see myself is being an entrepreneur in what I love and hopefully and know what to do, which is VC. So I do think of myself as an entrepreneur in that way, having built a team together with Pier Paolo and everything. I'm super proud and humbled with what we have built. And I do see myself as an entrepreneur in that way. So yes, it was a hard decision back in the day, but I really wanted to be part of this project. And again, Pier Paolo is someone I really respect. He's one of the smartest people I know, and I guess just also his humility and I guess his motivation and wanting to really give back to the ecosystem and really develop the next generation together of entrepreneurs and helping them to 0 to 1, which in my humble opinion is where I guess where we all have to most concentrate. I wouldn't say it's easier, but I would say it's different to help a Series A, B company. From the 0 to 1, you really have to get your hands dirty. It's all about team building. It's all about company constitution. And it's all about the right culture, the right values. I really like the stage. And I think it's now, luckily, there's more people involved. But at the time we started and how we had viewed the ecosystem for the last years, me from my Kaszek days and Pierre from Voila, it has been something that was at least not so well represented.
And of course, all these names and stamps and your background help a lot. But would you say were the main differences, challenges, and opportunities you found living a very incredibly well-known VC firm and then starting a new one from scratch?
I think I would say I was very fortunate to always be, let's say, resilient in the fact that I knew that I wanted to do this. I had, I guess, the tools to be able to do that. I had learned throughout my multiples, not only Kaszek, throughout LXG, and again, being trusted by Pierre to manage this was a huge honor. So of course there was a lot of difficulties through the way. And again, I see myself as an entrepreneur in that regard. So that was also a huge challenge. So back in my Kaszek days, I would say like it's like helping entrepreneurs and everything. I did it from a different perspective than I do today. Today, I feel more of an entrepreneur and I feel more of their pain. So in that regard, I do feel I have that operational experience, although not have building a startup, built like impartially building together with the whole team at VC gave me a much more deeper understanding and perspective of what each founder actually leaves behind to pursue their dreams and how that is embedded in the passion and I guess in the day-to-day efforts that each and every one puts in. And I'm much more respectful. Not that before I wasn't, but I'm much more respectful for the effort that each entrepreneur puts in their new beginnings.
Yeah, and I guess on Gustavo's previous question about what motivated you to jump, I guess it's also something that's not as common in developing markets, VC developer or tech developing markets, for example, as you said, Argentina or even Spain. I don't think in Spain it's very common to see people jump from one VC firm to the other or leave VC firms to launch their own. But I think it's something very intrinsic to our industry. And I think it's also very common, for example, in more mature markets like the US. I mean, climbing certain ladders at certain firms. And I'm not saying that this was the case at Kaszek, but sometimes it's tough. And sometimes there's like a train that comes once and you don't know if it's gonna come by again. So you better jump on it if you got the chance.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. In this case, again, I couldn't be more grateful, but I also saw this with Kaszek. I couldn't be more grateful with Kaszek, and I found my calling there. But I had also seen this pre-seed and seed gap in the market, and when Pierre approached me with this idea and with his desire to give back to that early ecosystem, for me, it was just a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity with someone I admire and really trust. So it was a no-brainer to be in charge of this.
So you mentioned before about being value add to the founders. And we also like to understand how other firms operate just for our own curiosity and improvement purposes. So can you tell us a bit about how 17 Figma operates internally? How do you guys make investment decisions? How's the firm run?
Of course. So we're in the core investment teams. We take decisions quite horizontally and unanimously in that sense. So of course, Pierre participates on all our investment meetings and ICs and decision makings, but he is CEO of Voila, and that, of course, is his main day-to-day job. However,
I don't want to stereotypize things because I personally don't like this, but I mean, you are a female founder in Latin America, in the VC ecosystem, and you also invest in startups. Have you seen this as a challenge, as an opportunity? Have you seen female founder percentages raising? Would you comment a little about that?
yeah, so I think that comes very to heart to me. So for me, it's super important to be able to speak about this and for there to be more women in positions of power in terms of decision makings, in terms of investments. That's something that we luckily have seen to increase, but it's still way below, I guess, parity terms. For me, it's very important it's not just in terms of wanting to have an equality in terms of number. I truly and sincerely believe that different views, different opinion, and that not only goes to gender, it goes to different demographics, it goes to a lot of different, let's say it can go to lots of different parameters, but I do think from a gender lens, it makes just such amount of sense to have different views in terms of investing in both in terms of companies as well. So that is super important for me and for our firm as a whole. So we really take a look, and we're very proud to say that although right now it's not what I wish for, we have 35% of our companies have a co-founder, which is a woman, which is above industry. I would love in an ideal scenario that the industry would be 50-50 and even our be the same. But unfortunately, the industry is more on a 20% level. We're very fortunate to have that 35%. But again, when we look into this particularly, we look into the best teams, and for me, the best teams also generally have a diverse viewpoints and different viewpoints, and that sometimes has not to do with again more women being involved. So I think that's an important topic for me.
Have you seen that being increasing? I understand that you're also a professor at Universidad Torquato de Tella. So interest of women for entrepreneurship, technology specific or otherwise?
Luckily, yes, I do see that it has increased in the last years. And I'm very proud and very happy of that. I think as more women get into positions of power, let's say call them power with a lot of commas, or being in decision-making situations, other women feel upcoming entrepreneurs feel more, let's say, heard than before. Or let's look at VC firms 10 years ago, or not even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. How many women female partners did you have? Luckily today,
we can talk about a month ago.
Yeah, even
unfortunately.
So. Yeah, unfortunately, like I think when we started 17 Sigma, I was coined to be the first 17 Sigma, the first woman-led fund in Spanish-speaking LatAm, which was true actually. When we looked at it, was coined by one of the news articles, and then looking into it, it was like, fuck, this is right, this is true, and I was happy. Yeah, it was unbelievable. I was happy, but on the other side, very sad, because it couldn't be that like I was the first woman to be in charge of a VC in that regards. But luckily, I think that has changed, and the industry has developed, and month by month, and day by day, even Goose, we see a change in that, and I'm very proud. And there's a lot of women who approach me and generally I think want and feel more comfortable in speaking with another woman. I'm always I push back on that a bit, and I was always very fortunate to, as I was previously telling you guys, raised by my mom and grandmother. I never saw like this gender thing as a problem. I am very vocal. I am very transparent, and I always try to help other women that maybe have been raised in different environments, in different situations, and maybe their voice was unfortunately not as much heard, to be able to vocalize in a different manner and be able to express their opinions in the same freedom. I also think that sometimes there's a different bar, unfortunately, in terms of women have to be much more fierce, let's say, in a male dominated industry to get their ideas heard. I think that also is changing, but also part of the game and personality traits, I guess.
Awesome. There's a quote from Madeleine Albright that I really like that says that there's a special place in hell for women in power who don't help other women. So this is very important.
I like that one.
So now moving on to portfolio. So the first thing I want to say is that I think it's very interesting that 17 Sigma does pre-seed and seed in a multi-country approach, because this is a very local stage. I mean, it's a stage where everything is local. Sourcing is local. Helping is local, especially for pre-product market fit companies. I mean, you were talking about team building being the greatest value addition, because in essence, the teams and the entrepreneurs have to find their way into this product and founder market fit and so forth. But you have developed quite a network for that. And as I understand, you have now partnered with more than 20 startups in LatAm. So the first question I would say, why do you think that these entrepreneurs chose 17 Sigma? And why would you like them to choose you?
So right now, actually, 44% of our deployed AUMs are in Brazil and the rest in Spanish speaking. I think that as we have been speaking, we take a lot of time in actually developing those relationships and connections in each and every one of those markets. And I think the main reason that entrepreneurs luckily choose us is that we really put a lot of effort in building those relationships and showing how hands-on we are. We're a low frequency, high conviction firm in the sense that we partner with a few companies and really dedicate our 110% to those. It's really important for us to be very hands-on and supportive with anything the company may need. Since building a team, as you well said, we have really put an effort in building all the best connections in every ecosystem we operate. We also help, for example, there's a huge good talent pool in Argentina, which is sometimes not used as much, specifically on the technical side, right? Again, we had a huge wave, as you guys know, of huge tech companies, and those tech companies had matured, and there's many ex-Mercado Libres who have left Mercado Libre, and so on, with all the other big tech companies that are super senior engineers. And we help all, for example, Brazilian companies, or most of Brazilian companies, even hire engineers from Argentina or from actually around the region. The same vice versa. So we're very well connected in that sense. And I think entrepreneurs choose us. And I think it's a better question for the entrepreneurs that choose us, Gusten, and you know lots of them very, very well. But if I would humbly have to say why they choose us, I think that we put more effort than I would say almost any other VC in the region to really get those companies going from that 0 to 1. Of course, there's other firms that do it better, from the 1 to 100. Let's say the Series A, B funds that know their turf in that area better. But I would say in our turf, I do believe we're hopefully becoming one of the and will become the best pre-seed seed firm in the region, and I have very high conviction of that.
Awesome. And I'm also happy. What sort of movements have you been seeing? I mean, you have, for example, Aravita, who has just found product market fit, expanding the first clients. You have Foodology, which is expanding pan-regionally, so going out of Colombia, going to Brazil, becoming quite a power force in Brazil. You have Angie Cash, which was founded in Brazil and is growing a lot in Brazil, just raising a new round now. You have Truora, which is more like a deep tech company, like let's put it deep as in the LatAm deep depth of that. Jeeves, which went for a regional expansion. So you have several movements happening at the same time in your portfolio. What sort of trends and movements have you been seeing? And I would go from the Bianca of 2018 and Kaszek, looking at the LatAm VC ecosystem in general, and passing on to 17 Sigma and seeing how all this has evolved over time.
I think personally, I've always liked building blocks, and how I describe building blocks. I think still in terms of Latin America, there's so many things that are yet to be built. If we think about it, LatAm has half the population of China and a GDP greater to India's, and yet there's so many things ripe for disruption. So in that sense, I like to think about building blocks and what is yet to be disrupted. And in those regards, if we like one of our last investments was, for example, a company in the pension space called Stay in Brazil. I think that's still a huge market to be disrupted. It's a B2B2C company. Let's say doing the 2.0 Providencia. I think that's a huge market. Then we, as you mentioned, Aramita, right? In the waste management, and the fresh food waste management is a huge, also building block, as we know. And we continue to evolve both in a climate perspective, in so many ways. It's so important to keep our natural resources very well kept. So I think in general, what has always attracted me in terms of investment, let's say, ideas are things that can be very big, that can even be global eventually, but I guess that are things that are more of a painkiller, not a vitamin. And the same goes, for example, to NGCast, which you just mentioned, that raised a very big Series A led by Monashis, that they're actually doing financial inclusion, digitalization for the new generation, for Gen Z, which is super impressive. What Mario and the team there has built is just outstanding. Just the product market fit there is outstanding. It's a generation that, to be honest, I have learned so much of. So I do believe, and that has always been my style of investing. And I guess the areas that have always been the more interest to me.
And you mentioned before, Bianca, about being industry agnostic as a firm, and even if it's things beyond your portfolio, are there any specific areas, industries that you guys at 17 Sigma are looking into that are specifically interesting at this point in time?
I think that varies, to be honest. Like, each member of the team has specific verticals they like a lot. So, for example, Fran and our team loves everything that has to do with the automotive industry in general. And I guess each and every one of us have our like secret, not ideas, but secret, like more specialized things we like to read and learn about, and companies we each and independently continue to specialize on. Having said that, I say it goes more, and going back to a previous question, teams are the most important part of it. So we always will bet on the team. That's the most important aspect. So then, of course, what they're building in terms of TAM and potential modes are important, but we can learn about different industries, but we're, I think, more in a position to judge and evaluate teams than I would say each market in itself. If we knew more than of a particular market than the team investing, then we wouldn't be investing in that team.
And do you see teams being built in a pan-regional approach or more local? It's still more local.
In our embryonic stage, it's still more local. We do believe in in-person work in that regards. Let's say at least in the core founding teams, we do like that. For example, I was telling Jaime and Gus just before we jumped into the call that we just inaugurated our first formal offices here in Buenos Aires, the first hopefully of many as we continue to grow, not only as a fund, but as a firm. We really believe in in-person work. That doesn't mean that we're not going to eventually have people on the ground and offices cross-regionally, but I do believe that for the initial team, it's very important to build a culture. For example, we're full day in the office 5 days a week. Unless when we travel, of course, which is very frequently as well. But I guess for founding teams in embryonic stage, we do believe in that first local team approach. And eventually, again, as we were speaking with the gender diversity, I also believe that multiple country diversity is also very important as teams continue to scale and give a different approach to investing and to building companies as well.
Awesome. And well, you've been a venture investor for 6 years now, going from one top firm, starting another top firm, pan-regional, seeing the boom, and I won't say the bust, but an accommodation of VC funding, let's put it like that. How do you see LatAm playing out in the future, and how do you see 17 Sigma about that 10-year time frame from now?
So everything I'm about to say, I guess...
That's the easy one.
No, that's easy. That's an easy one. No, but everything I'm about to say is not an investment advice, of course. But what I would say is, since I guess the peak of the market in September 21, which if you aggregate all the market cap of all Latin American listed company was around 240 billion to, I guess the trough was June 2022, which market caps hit a low of 84 billion in terms of Latin American companies until where we are today, that it's roughly around 190 billion. I would say there's still a huge opportunity which lies ahead. If you think about it, I guess the number was around 75%, not around, it's 75% of the market cap is Latin American companies are driven by Mercado Libre and Nubank, and there's still so much to be done with other firms. So I do believe the best is yet to come. I highly believe in that. So going into the question, yes, I have lived multiple, let's say, stages within. I was lucky enough, it's almost 7 years now that I have been working in this, and I have lived through different cycles. And I guess in 19 to 2021, the most important thing was growth at all costs. Then we went into a period where growth at all costs was no longer a thing. So 21 to 23, I would call it more of a resilience or long-term horizon. And what at least we're seeing today is something what is mostly valued is flexibility, agility, innovation, and sustainable growth. And I guess a structural mindset towards liquidity and even event profitability, which I guess is what we have been most seeing and looking for our startups today, and we have advising our prior investments in as well.
And one thing we have been asking in these interviews is about the role and the inner workings of VC capital firms. What are the processes? How was the design for 17 Sigma? You have an operator in the founding team, which of course brings a lot of processes and questionings and different mechanics to the job, to the day-to-day job. Would you comment a little about how 17 Sigma works?
Of course. So We're very horizontal in nature. We take decisions all together. So in the core investment team, we're 4, and of course Pierre. Pierre participates in our Cs and investment making decisions, and moreover, because of his operational experience, he helps our portfolio companies a lot. But his day-to-day job is voila. And on the core team, I am managing partner, and I'm very grateful at having 3 amazing investors alongside myself. And again, we of course, each one of us likes different industries, moreover, and has in charge different portfolio companies to be very hands-on and supportive of those. But we're very, as well, we work as a team, and I'm very happy and humbled to have built something that I'm very proud of how we work and how we complement each other in every way, not only from Pierre's operational experience to all the team's experience from different backgrounds.
One other thing, I mean, we all talk about this finance and plus operational backgrounds as complementary in our profession. One thing that we always discuss is that when you are in operations, everything is routine. I mean, you have the processes and the meetings and everything for routine for that. Whereas in VC investments, because of the power law and the investments, it seems like we have a partner that says it seems like going to the movies. Sometimes you get to the movies and there are like 3 movies you want to watch, and most of the times you go to the movies and there are no movies you want to watch. You just have to be ready then to do nothing where there are none, and to do all the 3 where there are the 3. How do you see this balance between operation and finance backgrounds?
That could be more precise, Gus. I think that in that case, although as you're stating, operations sometimes and finance may let's say not come from the same.
So one thing that we've been discussing a lot is the complementarity about operational backgrounded people with this finance and investment backgrounded people for our profession. We have a partner that says that VC investing is is just like going to the movies. Sometimes you go to the movies and there are 3 movies you want to watch, and most of the times you go to the cinema and there are no movies you want to watch. Whereas in the operational role, you're more used to routines and everything happening weekly. You have everything planned for that. How do you see these 2 profiles working together? I mean, you worked with former operators at Kaszek, Mercado Libre, and now you work with an current operator at 17 Sigma, voila.
I think that's a perfect analogy, Gus. I really like that one. I'm very lucky to say that in both, I think on the operational side, at least Pierre here at 17 Sigma knows that this is a low frequency, high conviction firm. And in that regards, of course, we would always like to be interested in 3 movies at the time. But if there's no movies playing or no movies that should be seen, we're very patient. We know this is a very, very long-term game. So I would say patience is just fundamental. So if there's 3 movies we want to see, we will watch them all. If there's nothing to be seen, we will. Luckily, we have so many things to do. So there's so much portfolio help. There's so much internal work to do. There's so many other things as well. And I guess as we always prioritize portfolio first, then pipeline second, and we all put a lot of work to it. But if answering directly to the question, I'm very grateful that in that sense, I don't see in terms of the operational experience going against at least our low frequency, high conviction approach.
Good answer. So before jump into the closing questions, during our research, one question that came up for 100% of the people said we had to ask you is, what was the inspiration for the 17 Sigma name? Where did that came from, and who came up with that?
that's something that people generally do ask a lot. So I guess we're all, I would call us very nerdy in the team in some regards. So actually, it comes from the Gospel Statistics 101, let's call it. So 1 sigma is just 1 standard deviation from the mean. So here at 17 sigma, we wanna be able to catalyze and help create extremely rare, extraordinarily and statistically unlikely events. So that's where the name was coined, and that's what we're here for.
Awesome. Bianca, last closing questions. Can you recommend us a book or some other form of content? Can be startup related or not. And can you also suggest someone to bring to the podcast that hasn't been on before?
Perfect. So I guess a book, that I have been reading is a book called Chip War by Chris Miller. It was actually Pierre recommended me the book a while ago, and I didn't have time to read it. I recently came back from New York and got the book. It's a really interesting book. I don't want to spoil it, but highly recommended. History meets BC history. So I really enjoy that book. And in terms of who you should invite to the podcast, Jaime, I would invite Gus. He was never interviewed in the podcast. He was always the interviewer. I would love to hear him firsthand. He's an amazing investor as well.
Let's talk about that.
He's only been interviewed for a job interview. That's the only time he's been interviewed at KFAN, basically.
How can we make that happen? He's an amazing investor. We love catching up and collaborating. So I definitely would like to switch sides here and hear his story.
Look, we'll have him on for sure. It'll be the next one. That's for sure.
By the way, I really like Chip War. It's amazing how the geopolitical side matches with the technological development into that. It's very good book. It
is a really good book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm on the last final pages, but I'm trying to delay that anguish of finishing. Well, that joy of finishing the book, but the anguish as well as it being done. But guys, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm a huge fan actually of the podcast, so it's an honor for me to have been part, and hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you, Bianca. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.